Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, and welcome to the Assistant Governor's training. We're glad you're here. We want to welcome you to this webinar and hope that it will provide you with some information about being an assistant governor, some expectations that I know Kurt will talk about, and how we as a team can work much better together in this combined new district of 5680. There we go.
I joined, Fred.
Our presenter is Kurt Harper, who is currently the district governor-elect and will be the district governor for the new 5680 starting July 1. So welcome, Kurt. I will turn this over to you, and you just cue me in on when you would like me to advance the slides.
Okay, well, as much as I like to see my name right up there in bold print, let's move to the next one and jump right into some of the primary sources that I'd like all the assistant governors to be turning to for kind of a training resource and a reference resource. And the single most important one is one that I hope you've all either already downloaded or have in a print edition, and that's this Lead Your District for the Assistant Governor booklet that's shown on the next slide. If you don't already have it in PDF, it's pretty convenient to get. It's a small file, and it's well indexed, and it's put together in a pretty good way. But most importantly, for those of you who hopefully will be able to stay on into the future, you'll notice that the current version is only valid through 2020, which will be the end of the upcoming year. So sometime along the road, I would like for everyone just to take time to check with RI online, either through My Rotary or through their training center, or even running a search on the site to see if they've come out with a new version, so we can start planning ahead by a year by looking to see if there are any new expectations that RI has imposed. RI is in the middle of kind of reevaluating how they do a lot of things, and I think everyone is aware they're looking at membership categories, how clubs administer themselves, and a lot of other things to get away from some of the traditions. And I think we'll see some changes in how the assistant governors are suggested to operate in the near future. Let's move on to the next slide. One of the most encouraging things that I found in the book itself is in the table of contents. The part that describes role and responsibilities is only 3 pages long. One of the assistant governors I spoke with described this as being an extremely easy job. In contrast, when I was speaking with one of the former assistant governors, that assistant governor had used that as the measuring rod by which he decided not to have his name thrown into the hat as being the district governor. What I thought maybe this would be a good spot to get some input from existing assistant governors on how big of a time demand it's been for you in your special setting, and how you see moving forward to try and keep it a manageable size assignment. Ken, I've got you on screen and leaning forward. Can you kind of chime in? You've got, as I recall, the farthest northwest corner of the state. Is that right?
That's correct. I've got 6 clubs. The closest one is my own club, 2 blocks away. And the furthest one is about 90 miles away, Sharon Springs.
Okay. So how big of a time load is it for you to stay in contact with the clubs? And what kind of changes do you see would be helpful moving forward to try and either ease the load or use the time you're spending more efficiently?
Well, I've had one experience with Zoom, and I think that'll be outstanding. I think it's a better system than GoToMeeting, just from what I've seen. And if I can get my presidents online with Zoom, and it will reduce the workload quite a bit, probably.
Okay.
Face-to-face meetings.
Yeah. we're kind of getting ahead, I think, a little bit on what we've got in the outline, but while we're kind of making this a discussion point, Mike, Brock, are you able to? Mike was logged in earlier.
Yeah, Mike seems to be continue to be logged in. He may be on mute.
Okay. Do we have the ability to unmute Mike, or does he have to do that himself?
He should have to do that himself.
Okay.
Yeah. Oop. He drifted off, or he may be trying to connect by phone. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right.
Arlen is also trying to check in with us, and I'm trying to get him connected.
Okay. Well, why don't we kind of move through a couple slides while we're making sure they're both in and available. Are you able to advance the PowerPoint a slide or two, Fred?
I'm sorry. Are we ready to move to the next slide?
Yes, please.
Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Sorry. 2 phone calls.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. And this slide, I think we've already talked about, and that is the role and responsibilities is a 3-page list is all. If we go to the next slide, for summary of responsibilities, when I look through the description, I think the biggest thing to consider the assistant governors is doing is knowing the clubs in your area, and because you will be the mode of communication between the clubs and the district in a lot of different respects. So it's fundamental that you find ways to know the club. Ken, we were talking just a little bit ago about some of your experience in trying to stay in touch. What are you using currently as the best way to stay in touch with the clubs?
Email.
Okay.
But I think it'll be, to me, I'm not a real fast typist, so it would be better if I could just talk to them on maybe a monthly basis, you know, get a monthly basis going and see how keep things going. And basically, I keep track of my clubs in a 3-wing binder that's got 1 tab for every club, and I just keep notes in that.
Okay. And what is your experience in terms of the extent to which clubs contact you on their own initiative as opposed to your needing to initiate contact with clubs? Do you hear from clubs for purposes other than if they have a problem they want to talk about?
They don't normally, unless there's something special comes up, maybe an invite for a Veterans Day or something like that.
Okay.
A club that had, we went to an auction in Atwood a couple weeks ago that raised about $15,000. So, and I got an invite to that, but that
okay.
was not too many phone calls. Once in a while, if they have a specific question. Typically, it's via email though, and that's how I get a hold of them.
Okay. Do we have Arlen on the line at this stage?
Yes, he should be on. He should be with us.
Okay, Arlen, would you like to unmute and tell us something about how you approach contacting clubs in our area? It looks like Arlen's mic has gone green, which is probably a good sign.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you describe a little bit about how you are able to keep track of the clubs in our more urban setting where the clubs are not the kinds of distances that are out in more of the rural areas?
Sure. I have been in contact by email, by telephone, and by face-to-face visits. Plus, we've tried to get the presidents and the president-elects of this city to meet monthly, and sometimes that's where we've made contact to go over things and make sure things are working okay.
Okay. And just by way of contrast, what is the total distance between your two most distant clubs, do you suppose?
Yeah, probably about 50 miles.
50? What are the two that are the farthest apart?
It would be the East Club, and now you're putting me on the spot. What's the Kingman Club?
Okay. And
so all of mine are in Wichita except for Kingman, and it's out west.
Okay. And has the Kingman Club been able to participate with you in any of the joint meetings, or has that been more of a Sedgwick County focused effort?
No, that's been Wichita essentially. The Sedgwick County, Derby and Andover have joined into that as well.
Okay.
And they're not in my zone or my region as a assistant district governor.
One of the roles of the assistant governors is not only to gather information about clubs, but also to try and distribute information to clubs. And my experience in what has been 5690 has been pretty limited in terms of the role that assistant governors have played in the Wichita area, other than in coordinating meetings of the presidents. Are you finding as assistant governors that you are getting enough information from the district currently? Are there ways that the district can better facilitate your duties currently? And that's kind of an open question to all of the sitting assistants there. So I've got Ken and Arlen and Mike to chime in as well.
Can you hear me now? This is Mike.
Yes, Mike, welcome aboard.
I decided to call in because I'm at work and my computer's kind of being difficult. So
okay,
it doesn't have a microphone. So now I'm on my cell phone so you can hear me.
Good. So we're talking.
My question or my answer to the question of what would help. I used to use the website a lot for information, the district website, and the last few emergencies that I've had have taken a lot longer than normal because that website's not up to date.
Okay.
Well, and unfortunately, I don't have a printed directory that I can go to and use.
Well, one of the things that we had considered in the merger process is whether to continue producing written directories or to go exclusively online. And currently, we determined that one of the requirements is that the district governor produce a directory. So we're going to have, moving forward, updated paper directories available largely on request, so we don't have to generate more than are absolutely necessary. But the website itself is also being redesigned. And as I understand it, there will be some portions that are designed specifically for members and leadership contacts, and the other will be kind of the public information side of that same website. So hopefully we will be able to address that moving forward. When you've run into problems, Mike, what have you done to try and track the answers down if you discover the website seems to be out of date? Is it a matter of finding the right person to talk to?
Yeah, I'm just making a few more phone calls.
And one of the things that I will be working on is making sure that we get out to the assistant governors in a pretty reliable system, information that either comes from executive committee meetings, information well in advance of other training sessions and things like that, to give you information to make sure that you can share that with the clubs so that it retains its two-way communication aspect.
Definitely.
Can we roll to the next slide, Fred?
Hey, Kurt,
Yes.
as far as those directories go, I find a paper directory to be very much more useful than the website.
Okay.
But if you were to produce that as a PDF would certainly be just as useful as a paper copy.
Okay. And I think it will exist in at least 2 and possibly 3 forms. There are some people who definitely prefer paper. Even some of the people involved in helping to decide what the website should look like just like to have a paper copy at hand. So if they're in their car or somewhere where they don't have easy access electronically, they may have the paper. There will be PDF, which is probably the form that will be on the website as the primary version. And then it's my understanding, at a level way above anything I understand, a lot of the information will integrate through My Rotary and through Club Runner, so that there's kind of a transparency of exchange of information between the district leadership, and the Rotary international records as well. So Fred, do we have the ability to move to the next slide?
I moved it to the next slide. It's the training events and new leaders.
You're right. I cleverly have 2 slides with the same title so I could confuse myself about a third of the way through the seminar. So this slide kind of focuses on the value as assistant governors in participating in different training events. Now, I know that one of the assistants that I've recruited is not available for some of the early training events. That's part of why I've emphasized the value of referring to the written information and making sure that we've got open channels of communication for any specific issues. But a number of training opportunities arise at Zone Institute, which will be in Kansas City, District Conference, which will be in Wichita this year in October, and then PETS, which will be in Wichita next year. And the PETS session, Fred, as I recall, is the last weekend of March in 2020. Does that sound right?
That does sound right. I will check that.
Okay. And those are the biggest opportunities for either issue-specific training to occur, or just as valuably to be able to interact with the other district leadership and just talk generally about how things are going as an assistant governor. Also, participating in those sessions and the regular contact with the clubs is a great way to start identifying new leadership in the clubs, identifying areas where a particular club may have a new member that's looking for a home on responsibilities. And that, if you can share that information upstream to the district, that's extremely valuable in our continuing to grow with leadership on committee levels, hopefully on assistant governor levels, and then even in the chain of the district governor succession as well. But it's critical to us at this stage to really use some of our redrawn lines to really work on getting people involved who are either new to Rotary or at least have been in Rotary for, say, 10 years and are really looking for an opportunity to get more involved in a lot of different ways where they can grow their leadership opportunities. Let's move on to the next slide for the key relationships. One of the pages from the manual talks about who the different relationships are that you should look at fostering as an assistant governor. A lot of those are pretty self-explanatory, and that's going to be the people in the club column, making sure that you have a good conversational level of relationship with presidents and secretaries. Clubs that are big enough to have executive director or executive secretaries, it's good to talk with the administrators there as well. Those are going to include, I know, the Downtown Club, the East Wichita Club, the West Wichita Club. Ken, are any of the clubs in your area large enough to have actual executive secretaries, or is it a very much pass the baton kind of transition for your clubs?
Colby's got the largest club with about 60 members, and they have some quasi executive secretaries, but it's typically a pass the baton type stuff, I think. And
Okay.
that's how they get their president-elects, they, move up the field. And that's how most of us, unless we're just twisting arms to get a president out here.
Right. So, and I think that's typical. Once a club size gets below 50, I think it would be rare to encounter someone who's actually a designated executive secretary who does the secretarial function year after year after year. I think that there's very much a learning from your predecessor task on those. I saw that Helen is with us now as well. Is that right, Helen? If you are, I see you on the list, Helen. Can you unmute yourself? I was going to ask for input from Helen on whether in the Panhandle clubs there is a tradition of kind of a continuum for the secretarial functions and the administrative functions, or whether most of those clubs also are a pass it along from year to year. But Helen has not unmuted yet. So if you're able to join us, Helen, please do. On the district leader side, obviously I'm going to, at the top of the list for the district leaders is the governor. And I'm going to really make a concerted effort to try and do Zoom conferences with everybody. If not monthly, then every 2 to 3 months at the very least, to keep you informed on executive committee changes, let you know of any vacancies we're experiencing for committee openings at a district level. Dana, you are on the line, I know. Are you on the line, and can you unmute and talk about some of the ways that you hope to see the use of the assistant governors expand over the next couple of years?
Can you hear me, Kirk?
I can, yes.
Okay, good. Well, one of the things that I'm really hoping is that we can get the assistant governors to PETS, because people who attended PETS last year mentioned that they really would have liked to have gotten to know their assistant governor at that PETS training. So even if the assistant governors could come in for a couple of hours on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, I think that would be time that would be well worth it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we're clear about when that occurs and where, because we have, during the PETS session, we have district breakout sessions, and that's actually a great opportunity for the assistant governors to attend and start developing that personal relationship for the upcoming year. That might be a good prompt for us to slide or move on to the next slide, which is a timeline that's also in the manual for leading your district. Can we move to that next slide? Well, we're already in May, which means with the typical organization I've had as a district governor-elect, we've blown right by February and March without touching base. And we're partway through the April to June segment. Most importantly, I think on the timeline for preparing is at least establishing a relationship with the club leadership. That doesn't necessarily involve a physical visit each time, but at least reaching out, having some telephone contact with the incoming president. There are some clubs in at least the Legacy 5690, there are 6 clubs to be precise, but we do not yet have an incoming president identified that anyone knows about. Now, they may have been elected or they may have been drafted, but so far the information on My Rotary is not updated. Information that has been provided to the district so far has not been updated. So one of the key functions over the next few weeks is to try and determine whether you've got club presidents identified. If not, see if there is leadership in place to either select a new leader or to succeed themselves, which has happened in a number of the clubs in both halves of the new district moving forward. Who can chime in on where they stand on knowing they've at least been in touch with the incoming leadership for next year's club leadership roles? Ken, I think you've got a full slate of presidents-elect at this stage in your district.
They're either carryovers or president selects. We have 2 carryovers and 4 new presidents. So, yeah.
Okay, great. And Arlen, as far as we know, are all of the urban clubs in a position where they know who their successors will be?
As far as I know, yes. We have one club that is in a bit of turmoil right now that we've been dealing with, and I have not talked to Kingman to make sure that they're in succession.
Okay. And
well, Kurt, I'm on the phone. This is
there you
Helen.
are. Hi, Helen. Welcome by phone. You still show up as if you're muted. So.
Well, my computer doesn't have a microphone,
Okay.
so I'm on the phone. I'm watching you and talking on the phone.
Okay. And where do we stand by now in the Panhandle? I think all of your people are identified at this stage. Is that right for next year?
Yes, they are.
Okay. What has your policy been in the Panhandle area in terms of physically visiting as opposed to telephone calls and emails to stay in touch?
Well, I do the email and I make phone calls, and then at least whenever I can make it, I make a visit to the different clubs, to the other 3 clubs.
Okay. And you have a total of 4 clubs, is that right?
Yes.
And Ken, you said you've got 6 clubs, I believe. So one of the questions that I've wanted to raise somewhere along the road is the allocation of clubs, and whether 4 or 6 is a good number, or whether that needs to be determined largely just by the sizes of the clubs that are involved. And what is our next slide? Actually, does anyone have any thoughts, concerns, or questions about the suggested timeline? If we roll back, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself.
Kurt, I had one comment.
Yes, Dana.
That is, it mentions talking to the outgoing AG, and I think that would be a great thing to do to get background and information about the clubs and how they function. Of course, they may tell you about the problems, but surely with our outstanding personalities, we can overcome those.
Okay, the audio is not great on that. I think, Dana, let me see if this is right. Your suggestion was if someone is transitioning, they're an incoming governor or assistant governor, it would be a good opportunity for them to talk with their predecessor to get a good sense of the personality of the clubs in that area.
Yes, I agree. And I think we always have to look at how we personally can interface with those clubs to make it successful as possible.
And I think you cut out at the beginning, at least on my computer, get it so that we can then, as a district, also get guidance from them on how to interface more effectively.
Right.
Okay, great. Well, if there aren't any other comments at this stage on the timeline, let's go ahead and do scroll to that next screen at this time, Fred. Growing Rotary is one of the kind of subtexts for the themes that our incoming Rotary International president has. And that, I think, is an area that we really need to emphasize in our district. And that's going to take the form of helping all of the clubs feel comfortable with where they are and comfortable about what Rotary is, so that we can help them better ascertain how to either better engage their existing members or hopefully recruit new members into pretty vital clubs. Towards that end, one of the things I want to try to do, I've described in here as crossing the line, which is not to be confused with the crossing the line concept of a famous casino in Kansas that's trying to get everybody in Sedgwick County to come down to gamble. Crossing the line here means how many ways can we facilitate communication between assistant governors and hopefully clubs in what traditionally was 5690 and what was traditionally 5670. So one of the areas that I hope to work on with all of the assistant governors is through these group meetings that I hope to have with the AGs from both of the legacy districts, is sharing a lot of ideas. Another thing that we may want to look at, I did not make any changes currently to the outline of where the different areas are. But as we discussed, there are some areas that have a lot of clubs, some areas have relatively few. Is there a logic moving forward to keeping those lines where they are, or should we explore ways to redraw some of the lines and equalize the burden? We've got about 60 clubs. We have 13 areas based on how the two districts were originally allocated. But I think the guideline is to have about 4 clubs per assistant governor. For each of you, do you see a need to increase the population of assistant governors? Ken, is 6 clubs too many? Helen, are 4 clubs too few?
I don't mind the number of clubs I have. I found it odd that Kingman was with me when Derby and Andover were not. It made more geographic sense to me if the whole Wichita, and when we were doing this before, we had talked Newton and Hutch as well, but it was just kind of strange that I had the Wichita clubs except for Derby and Andover, which are not truly Wichita, I understand, but then Kingman. So I don't have a problem with the number. I don't have a problem with the distance to go to Kingman. That's not a real issue. It just seemed it was the odd club out.
Yeah, when I looked at how the areas are defined currently in Legacy 5680, there's kind of the Wichita footprint plus Kingman, and then there's like a horseshoe around them, where it's what I've described as the near urban clubs. It's the ones that aren't part of the Wichita metropolitan area. They are clearly communities that are that have their own identity, but they're in kind of a circle of about 30 miles or so outside of Wichita that all are in one area. And that struck me as a strange way to draw the lines also. And how many clubs altogether for you, Arlen? 5 or 6?
I believe there are 6.
Okay. And you've got 6, and at least one of those is a good drive. You said it's about 90 miles.
Yeah, I think 6 is fine, but I think it should be based upon the distance. You know, if there were other clubs, which like Norton is only 30 miles away, but if you add that, then you're getting a time constraint as to visit all the clubs, right, in addition to the governor visits. So
right.
6 is a nice, healthy number for visits, but you got to take into account the distance. So
right. Okay. Well, one of the things maybe Dana and I can look collectively as we kind of get our feet wet on the new district all together, can take a look in a few months at whether some of the boundaries between the areas ought to be redrawn, because there may be areas where we can find better commonality or have a better layout for commutes than we have currently, now that we have the ability to do a little more shuffling north and south in some areas that we didn't have before. But I guess you're saying, though, Ken, that having 6 is fine as long as the distances make sense. Arlen, you're okay trying to manage 6, but you've got by definition, a dramatically smaller geographic area, especially if Kingman is not part of that. And then Helen, what about your experience with the 4 clubs in the Oklahoma Panhandle, but only the 4 clubs in the Oklahoma Panhandle? Does that work well?
No, the Oklahoma clubs in the distance, I mean, Beaver is 120 miles from me, but those work well for us.
Okay. So east to west, you've got the biggest span of anybody then, I think.
Yes, I think I do.
Okay. Well, I guess from your perspective, it's west to east, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Would it be hard?
Okay, I'm sorry. The 4 clubs in my area works well, and I have developed relationship with the clubs over the years, and so it turns out all right the way it is.
Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. And this gets back to the training aspect of it. We talked earlier about the value of the assistant governors actually attending some of the training sessions at zone or district conference or PETS. There's also some opportunities for training available through Rotary International. There's not only the book on suggestions for how to be an assistant governor, there's similar print materials for club leadership positions like presidents and secretaries. Those are good reference points for AGs to be familiar with, so that as you work with the club officers, you get a better sense of what their expectations are, or our expectations could be for those club offices. In addition, there is the I've already forgotten it. You'd think I'd know by now, the citation of merit, that if you meet certain criteria established by the RI president, then each club can get recognition for achieving those specific goals. Last year, out of 30 clubs in 5690, I think we had 1 club that actually made an effort to meet all of those criteria. Part of the training that I think that you can receive as AGs and then share with the club leaders is to emphasize how achieving those goals, the presidential citation goals, would allow the clubs to kind of give themselves a health check and kind of find ways to maybe inspire members to make sure the club meets particular criteria. It also allows you to kind of help work with the clubs to let them recognize areas that they may want more training in, or members may need some training in, and also make them aware of the same training opportunities. Because I think as we move into our new role as the expanded district, making sure new leaders are coming in and getting current training is extremely valuable. Ken alluded to some of the folks who have stepped up to the plate to serve a second term. Getting those repeat leaders to attend the president training sessions is probably less critical than a new leader or someone who was a club president 5 years ago and is renewing their commitment that way, because things change. And so we need to make sure that we take advantage of the relationships that you have with the clubs to keep the club leadership current on training opportunities and training requirements. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Fred. So again, emphasizing the visiting and working with clubs, I don't know that I can emphasize enough that the value as assistant governor is probably directly proportionate to the amount of contact that you can have with the clubs, although that doesn't have to be quarterly physical visits. If you look through the current materials, visiting the club perhaps annually and with the district governor is kind of a best practice. But beyond that, just finding a good forum, a comfortable forum, where the club leadership feels that they can approach you. I like the idea of having some kind of electronic meeting, perhaps with all the club presidents. Ken had talked about taking advantage of a Zoom subscription to be able to have all the presidents together. Arlen talked about the common meetings among club presidents to be a kind of an idea sharing thing. Those all count as ways to have contact with the clubs. Ken referred to an opportunity to attend a fundraising event for one of the clubs. That's a great social ability that counts as part of maintaining the contact. And I think it doesn't have to be scheduled in the sense of a really restrictive way, but just making sure that you've got avenues of communication open, you're in touch with the right people, and they know they can be in touch with you is a key to effectively using the contact with the clubs. Let's go ahead and roll to another slide. These are some of the specifics, again, that are in the manual of ways the assistant governors can work with the club leadership directly, helping them to set goals. That not only would cover the presidential citation goals, but even recognizing ways to set meaningful and measurable goals for membership, participation in club projects, and things like that. Helping the clubs to better understand their strengths will help them understand good ways for them to recruit members, and helping them to know what resources are available to them from the district and from RI. So making sure they know the contact people and the resources for matching grants at a district for district designated funds, or getting involved in maybe international projects that RI can help put together and help do some matchmaking on, are all ways to kind of keep the channels of communication open and work directly with the clubs on a lot of those areas that can make Rotary more exciting because it opens so many different doors. Slide. Arlen talked about the fact that there's a club in our area that's got some issues going on, and that is really a key part of what I hope we can accomplish through the network of assistant governors, and that is having you available to work with leadership, and I've put in bold, listening to the leadership in the clubs. I think we need to make sure that we honor the general function that the district is here to support clubs and not the other way around. So listening to the leadership in the clubs, trying to identify if there's an issue, what's the nature of that issue, and try and find ways to help them address issues, and not to try to provide intervention when it isn't welcome, or intervention that may be misdirected because someone was not tuned into the realities of what's going on at a club level. Arlen, I know you can't really talk a lot about the specifics, but can you talk about how you've approached the problem-solving questions that have been presented by any of the clubs you've worked with, without breaching anything that you think has been shared with you confidentially?
The biggest issue with this club is it's struggling for survival, and there are differences in opinion of members as to how it should go, and that has impacted leadership. So I've been trying to talk with both separately and jointly some of the people involved to reconcile and save the club. We have met with Kurt and I, and a couple of other past presidents have met, because all four of us were brought into the situation from the participants of the club. And we've sort of crafted a plan to go forward that is languishing in the midst of some personality conflicts and some personal crises of people involved. So it's kind of on hold for the next couple of weeks, and we'll try to regroup and go forward with it. But it is a lot of hand-holding, and it's a lot of trying to educate them as to possibilities of ways that they might be able to move forward. Is that what you're asking, Kurt?
Yeah, just you've taken the approach. I guess I want to emphasize that because of the nature of that issue, you've dug in to try to make sure everyone knows they've got an ear that they can talk to.
That is true.
Yeah, and I'm wondering in some of the other environments, if any of the other existing assistant governors have encountered problems where it's been an internal issue, as opposed to simply one of the problems that seems to dominate the attention of Rotary, and that is just sustaining or growing membership. Are there other issues that you found you need to confront that are internal issues, as opposed to just the frustrations of maintaining the vitality of a civic organization in the 21st century?
I think you've hit it on the head. That's primarily what we deal with, is just maintaining or much less growing organization.
And I think that's probably the single most common issue that I've heard from different clubs, is just how do we stay healthy in terms of keeping interest up in an organization. And I'm hopeful that as Rotary changes some of what it's doing, and we can provide some of those new resources, that we help each of the clubs then feel a little better about having a good base to work from. That gets us to the next slide, I think, which is just some other additionals to turn to. We've talked already about the Leading Your District as Assistant Governor. Another publication is a publication on being a vibrant club and how to develop club leadership plans. That's a good discussion tool for working with presidents as they're trying to develop a plan for this coming year or even the following year. Then I can't emphasize enough the value of using different tools through Rotary International. There's My Rotary, which allows you to do certain administrative tasks. Rotary Club Central allows you to ascertain information about some of the clubs. And the Learning Center has some useful webinar tools of their own, including one on being an assistant governor that was prepared by a district in England. And then there's even discussion groups that are hosted by Rotary International, either by topic or by leadership role. So I would end this part of the discussion with an emphasis to make sure you're familiar with all of those online tools. Rotary's website has historically been very difficult to navigate. That is less and less so. They keep finding ways to make the user interface a lot better. And I would encourage you all to take a good look at those tools moving forward. I think we've saved a little bit of time if anyone has any particular questions, which I think is what the next slide is, or any additional comments.
Well, Kurt, this is Helen. I don't have any questions, but is this all going to be available to us? It says it's being recorded, but are we going to have access to it later on to go back and review all this information? Because I'm going to have to go to a Blue and Gold Boy Scout banquet.
Yeah, yes, the recording will be available. And Fred, you've got the details on how that becomes available.
Yes, Kent will send out that information to all club and district leadership. So you should be receiving those links, and it'll be a YouTube video.
Okay.
Just like all of the other webinars are the same way.
Okay. Well, Kurt, thanks for putting this on.
Well, thank you for participating, Helen. And have fun at the Scout meeting.
I will. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Isn't that amazing? Helen finds some other way to serve.
Yeah. Well, do we have any other questions from Lisa? You are the newest person on the block right now. Do you have any questions that have arisen as you've listened to this?
The only question, and I maybe should know this, is where would I go to find out who the sitting AG is representing my assigned club, so that we can interface as we talked about earlier?
I am able to get that through My Rotary. That may not be something you've got access to, so let me check, and I can send you an email as to who the current AG is for your area.
Okay, that'd be fantastic, because I would, as suggested, like to, try to make it as seamless as possible if there are opportunities to continue on.
Kurt,
okay. Yes.
Kurt, I have a suggestion. what if we would send out the list of the current AGs and the clubs they cover to everyone who's going to be an AG?
Well, that sounds like
actually be easier to locate.
That sounds like some transparency idea. I don't know if we can deal with that, Dana. So yes, I think it's a good idea, because it also can open up the networking of just having AGs talk to each other, even in other areas. So I will make sure we get the current and the incoming lists out.
Lisa, where are you?
I am in Pratt.
You're in Pratt. Okay.
Yeah.
I believe. Hang on. I just pulled out the directory, because the directory has all that information in it of who the district governors are. If I can find it. I'm not sure we have. I'm not sure we have an AG identified for Pratt at this point.
I will double check that.
My clubs are Larned, Dodge City, and Kinsley. And so I wasn't sure if it just rolled over to who, was currently with the changes and merger, or if those have been reassigned.
Yeah, we currently don't have one assigned for Pratt, at least according to the directory. Interesting.
But if we made both the current and the new list available to all the AGs, that would be a resource that they could reach out to.
Right, we can figure it out. That would be helpful.
I take that back. I'm sorry. It is Dave Whitmore.
Yeah.
And he's Dodge City, Kinsley, Larned, and Pratt.
Okay, so like I said, I didn't know if they were just automatically the same since the merger occurred, or if, because I can reach out to him easily.
Yeah. He had served for a number of years, and I think he was ready to retire from the post. And that was not linked directly with the fact of the merger, other than it was kind of an opportune time to, in some of the areas, to do some changes. I've tried to rock the boat as little as possible moving forward, just because I wanted to keep as much of the existing leadership intact as we transitioned, with the idea that we will then be in a better posture. If with a few changes we have coming in, we'll be in a better posture to rotate through. Theoretically, an assistant governor is eligible, serves for 1 year at a time, and is eligible to serve for 3 consecutive years, which, as near as we can tell, and I think Ken can attest to, is a rule honored mostly by people ignoring it. So.
No, this is very helpful. Like I said, I'm glad to reach out to Dave. I just didn't want to assume that he was the previous one for the same club.
Yes, yeah, he is the current AG, and it would be great if you could reach out to him for observations.
Yeah, will do.
Okay. Ken, did you say you had a comment?
Yes, as far as future training or possible training for assistant governors, once we get Zoom available, might have a Zoom session for governors or assistant governors, just to learn how to use it a little bit. Fred?
That certainly could probably be worked out.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that would enhance your ability to use that for your own communications within your area. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think time-wise, that kind of gets us to a wrap. Fred, do you want to take us home now?
I would be happy to. We've already talked about this, but copies of the slides, the PDF of Lead Your District for AGs, and the link for this recording will be sent to you in the next couple of days. So be on the lookout for that when I get that to Kent Erb, and he will distribute it out to club and district leadership. So there are plenty of resources that we have in the 2 districts. This slide just kind of gives us the key 3 people in each of the districts, but reach out to whomever you need in order to do your job, whether it be past district governors, whether it be, you know, people that you know from other districts or whatever. Kurt, I want to thank you for doing this AG training. It's helpful for all of us. And I also want to let you know that District 5710 has offered some seats at Kansas Leadership Center training to us in the new 5680 district. You will be receiving information about that in the next day or 2 from Kent, as well as that information will be in the district newsletter. But it is on a first come, first served basis. And so be on the lookout for that. If you or any of your emerging leaders in your clubs are interested, I would encourage you to get registered for those right away. I would also encourage you to specifically invite 1 or 2 people from your areas to perhaps participate in the training, in the KLC training, because it is good information, whether for us in Rotary or for their own leadership development and careers. I want to thank Sue Pierce. Sorry?
Let me chime in with another announcement. You know, we talked about the value of relationships in serving as assistant governor. You should have received or will receive shortly the invitation to the New Year's party, I think is the billing that Andrea Krause has given it, on June 29th to celebrate the accomplishments of the 2 districts and launching the new district. So if you have a chance to attend that will be a great opportunity to get to know Rotarians in your area and in areas all over the district. So hopefully a lot of you can attend that as well.
I would suggest carpooling. If you can get some folks together from your clubs and carpool, it's a great way to have some bonding time, you know, for that couple of hour drive to, and I believe it's in Dodge City, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a good bonding opportunity as well as an opportunity to celebrate our 2 districts. So,
right.
Thanks to Sue Pierce for allowing us to use GoToMeeting. That her company gives us access to that. And last, thank you for participating and staying online with us for the hour. And if you have other questions, let Kurt or Dana know, and I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any of your questions and talk with you. So with that, we are done, and I'm going to end the recording.